Heroes come, heroes go, but legends live forever. It is none other than Joe E. Legend. Joe, how you doing, dude?
I'm doing well. How you guys doing? Thank you so much for having me, and I want to publicly say thanks. I wound up putting on a couple of delays here. I didn't realize what the time was and everything. And you guys have been very, very courteous in allowing me to come on a little bit later than originally planned, and I appreciate it.
Hey, that's not a problem at all. I know we've got a major time difference. So it's what, 7:30 there?
Yeah, 7:22 by my clock.
Okay. So we're behind you, so we can handle that. I guess before we get started, anything, Joe, let's talk a little bit about you. We've got an appearance coming up in Bristol, England here in the latter part of this year in November. Can you tell us a little bit about that, and what's going on with it?
Well, it's a convention called Booked. It's authors and wrestlers, and from what I'm told, there's collectibles. There's all kinds of stuff going on there. But because I'm putting out a couple of books over the next few months, we're going to be doing autograph signings and stuff like that. Plus, there'll be wrestlers. I love to be able to tell you the names. There are some former world champions that everybody's heard of and stuff, but they haven't made the formal announcement, and I feel like a jerk letting the cat out of the bag before the convention did. But they'll have wrestlers coming in for autograph signings, for seminars, for Q&As, all that stuff, as well as for, like I say, for the books. They have a couple of big-time authors coming in. So they're trying to hit as many different interest fields as possible to draw in a crowd. And I'm going to be able to hit a couple due to A, the wrestling, B, the films and TV shows I got upcoming, and C, the writing I've been doing, and the wrestling, obviously.
That's great. What dates are we looking at, Joe?
Oh, golly. Shoot.
I'm putting you on the spot, bud.
Yeah, no, gee whiz. I rushed here in the room to get on here. It's later in November. I know that, gee whiz. I wish I had it off the top of my head. I don't have it off the top of my head. I'm so sorry. I don't have it written down here.
It's okay.
It's on my PC, but I'm on my phone, so I can't look it up on the PC.
How about...
I got so many other dates upcoming for other stuff, it's hard for me to remember November.
How about Friday the 21st and Saturday the 22nd of November?
That sounds spectacular.
Joey Legend will be at Booked in Bristol in the United Kingdom. Will you be wrestling as well during that time over, Joe, or are you just going over just for the convention?
Well, they've been talking to a few promoters over there. We're going to try and get a few bookings in for the wrestlers, me included. So we're going to try and do a bunch of bookings around that time frame, and then hopefully even on one of those 2 days, maybe an afternoon gig to lead into the evening part of the convention.
Outstanding. I'm going to kick it over to Zane Paisley. I know he wants to talk about your literary skills.
Well, first off, on your website, it says that you've wrestled in 44 countries worldwide, and I'm not going to ask you to list them all off.
Oh, please.
But we know that you speak English and German. We were trying to figure out during our break how many other languages that you know. So, do you speak Spanish?
Well, what I've done is I've basically picked up how to speak or how to say please and thank you and be polite in as many languages as possible whenever I'm traveling. But usually, like, when I go to Japan, I get not half bad with, because I've been to Japan like 14 times. Yeah. So when I'm over there, I can pick it up and I can, enough to get polite and get by and not be a rude jerk, rude foreign jerk, pointing and shouting at stuff that I want. But then as soon as you leave the country, you don't use it anymore. It's like when I go to Italy, I can kind of remember, oh yeah, I remember how to say grazie and yada yada. But then as soon as I leave, it's gone because I'm off to France and I'm trying to remember how to do it in French, and I'm off to Russia and I'm trying to remember how to do it in Russian. It jumps around and then everything kind of reverts back to English, so I have to kind of change channels in my head to try and remember how to be polite, because I'll wind up saying, domo, spasibo, merci, dankeschön. But, in a restaurant in Germany, and by the time I've gotten to dankeschön, the waiter's already peed in my food because I haven't said thank you in the correct language. So it's a bit
Joe,
of a kick
the
in the head in that
Morningstar Will
regard.
Huckabee says that just because you live in Canada, you have to know French. Do you know French?
I took French for 3 years when I lived in Canada, and I remember so little of it. It kicked me in the ass too, because I was getting it was free. I was getting taught for free, and I was just learning enough to get by, but I thought I'm never going to France, and I'm not particularly fond of Quebec. And now, I've been to France 40 41 times, something like that.
Oh, wow.
And France is great. And I've been through Quebec, and I've enjoyed Quebec. Montreal is a great city. And now if I wanted to learn that, to get an intensive course, I'd have to pay, decent money to go and learn it. And I had it handed to me, and I pushed it away to race home, skip class, and watch heavy metal videos.
Oh,
so
rock on.
I was a complete cement head in that regard.
So Will Huckabee, how do you like that? I had 5 years of French, and Joe's had 3 years of French, and neither one of us can remember a darn thing about it.
Well, it happens.
I'm proof of that.
Well, let's get back to ZP.
Joe, tell us about Solstice Publishing and your writing partner, Crystal McCarrington.
Yeah, Crystal. I was because I've been doing. I've done a few films in France, and I did a couple of TV shows in England and stuff like that, a few movies, and I've got more film stuff on the go. I got involved in this. It's a website called LinkedIn. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's like it's like a networking thing. So I was a guy who wanted to get me involved in some films in Italy, put me onto that. So I just kind of signed on. I just started, anytime I saw film producer, movie producer, director, yada yada, I just sent out my resume. Just send it to everybody. Throw as much crap at the wall, see what sticks. And so I threw it there, and then she got back to me and she said, well, actually, we got this wrestling related project upcoming. You might be good for it. And she's in Scotland. So that was it's like an hour and a half flight maximum for me. So that's pretty easy. And I've been to Scotland dozens of times wrestling. So yeah, I can even pick up bookings while I'm there if you want. And, next thing, she was telling me that she's an author and she writes this and that and the other. And she wanted to get involved because she's a big wrestling fan. So then she wanted to get more and more involved with, get more wrestling content in her books. And she read me some of the stuff she had, and I was like, ooh, that's not really, if you're trying to show kind of a backstage element, that's not really how it works. And you're going to misrepresent it. The wrestling fans who know anything about it are going to read it and say that's not really correct. And those who don't know it probably wouldn't be interested in it anyway, so you're just going to misrepresent it for no good reason. You're not going to put them on a good path to try and draw them in. So I offered to kind of help in correcting her vision of what backstage was, because she's not a wrestler, she doesn't know. And then that led to me doing more and more with her. So eventually we kind of became writing partners, and we're coming out with a book series. Okay, there's Marie's World. Marie and Layla are two characters. Charlie is their dad. We're putting out a book called Marie's World. It's based on the two daughters who are involved in wrestling. The father who used to be involved. It's kind of like SmackDown 90210 if you want to get right down to the basics of it. It's a backstage thing, and it's more to do with backstage stuff and family interaction amongst the wrestling scene. The wrestling's kind of the backdrop, and so that's we started doing a book series on that, and that's actually being shopped now for a possible film or B, a possible TV series. So we're just waiting to kind of hear back on all that, because we've had to do it as a book, but then also to redo it as a script. And then have it ready to kind of be broadened out into a full TV series, which, like for HBO, it would be, 13, 14 episodes, but if it were something like NBC or ABC, CBS, that type of thing, it'd be, 20 episodes. So we've had to kind of really make it a free-floating narrative to make sure we could accommodate whoever wants to give us money, because those are the people we like the best.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Joe, what got you into this crazy business in the first place?
The wrestling business?
Wrestling.
I'm terrified of four walls. I do not want to sit and I do not want to just sit and stare at four walls and file papers. I don't want to just work on a big machine every day. I don't want to be, as Pink Floyd is one of my favorite bands, I don't want to be just another brick in the wall.
Yep.
I like seeing the world. I like, thinking my own thoughts and doing my own things. And I'd done martial arts for 10 years, and my usual quote for this question is that I had 4 black belts. I could kick anybody's ass the unemployment line, but it didn't help me financially, right? So I had to go out and make a living, and I became a wrestling fan because my dad used to take me to wrestling shows when I was in my early teens, and then I ended up going to them, obviously on my own or with my buddies as I got older. So wrestling always appealed to me because it just seemed like, a great way to kind of, I like the larger than life characters. I like the athleticism. I like at the time I kind of felt they were easy hours. I mean, you go and you do like 15, 20 minutes on a town show, and then like TV's like a 5-minute match. It seems like a pretty sweet schedule, but when you take into consideration all the traveling time away from your family, all the wear and tear on your body, everything like that, there's more investment than I originally glamorized it up to be. But more than anything, it's just I really didn't want to just I didn't just want to be another guy just staring at forms every day trying to take Xanax so he could focus. I wanted to live a life a little bit more interesting than that.
For those that aren't familiar with you and your career, you are from the Toronto area, and you have a great connection with Edge and Christian. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I was training at Sully's gym under Ron Hutchison and Sweet Daddy Siki. And just as I was getting ready to go to Japan, Edge won a contest, an essay contest to train for free. And so that's where I kind of met him. And then I took off to Japan for FMW. And I didn't know much about the guy. He's like, okay, he's a big kind of skinny hippie kid, fine. But by the time I got back, my buddy Keith, who I'd become really good friends with at the wrestling school. Sorry, my son just came in. Keith ended up hanging out with him while I was away for the month. And by the time I got back, he's like, yeah, this guy Adam, he's a good guy. He'll be hanging out with us more because we've really got on. And then we just kind of buddied up. And then Christian had to save his money for like a year so that he could join Sully's shortly thereafter. So then by the time they were both ready to go, I'd already kind of trained and been out and been to, Japan. And I was, going out into central Canada to Winnipeg and stuff like that. And then, doing as many indies as I could, considering how regulated Ontario was. Like, very few indie shows ran. It's just too expensive for promoters. With all the fees and all that stuff, it wound up being, like 10, 12 grand before you sold the ticket. So it was just too much for any promoter to run legally. And then if you tried to, work illegally, and Ken Hayashi, the commissioner, found out about it, he'd pull your license, and then, okay, now you want to work for WWE, they won't license you. So you want to protect your future, so you don't do it. So I was, clawing and scratching, but I was able to kick open a lot of doors for Edge and Christian when they got ready to go. And then once we all got ready to go, we all, traveled, did a lot in Detroit, where we ended up hooking up with Rhino, and then we became really good friends. And then going down into the States, and then I ended up going off to South Africa for a bit to do some work. And just, we kicked open doors, I don't want to say we kicked open doors for one another. I kicked more doors open, not to be I don't want to sound jerky about it, but I did kick open a lot of doors for them. So I didn't need them to kick open doors for me. But when WWE came calling, that was because both those guys, really kind of bigged me up to Terry Taylor and to Jim Cornette. So while I got them a bunch of indie gigs, they ended up getting me probably my biggest gig, which was WWE. So one hand did wash the other, so to speak.
In your wildest dreams, Joe, back in those days, this is obviously before Adam Stryker and all that gimmicks that Edge had when he went to WCW. Could you have a million years seen them where they're at today?
When they started, I knew they had, especially Christian. Christian just picked up everything so quickly. I knew they had the talent to do it, but judging by what Vince was putting on TV, I didn't think they would be able to. Because Vince just had, Hulk and Ultimate Warrior and all these monsters. And Jay and Adam are just not monsters. Adam's tall. But Adam, I think when he joined the gym, was only about 220. And he's only about an inch taller than me. I'm 6'3". So, I mean, I haven't been under 235 since I was 14. So I've always kind of, I've just carried well. My whole family's kind of big. So I'm actually the runt of the litter. So when I saw Adam, I thought, here's a guy with a lot of talent. He's got a good look and everything. He's just skinny. I can see, maybe let's take a look at him in a tag team or, some kind of gimmick, but not a massive push guy. But then, of course, the Benoit tragedy happened, and Vince, wellness policy. We need to push guys who can do something in the ring over just sell tickets in the airport. And as he's just always had this ability to be right place at the right time. And that was definitely the right place at the right time, right gimmick, right talent, right everything. And he got the right push. You look at his body when he got pushed compared to his body when he was doing the Edge and Christian Bill and Ted thing. His body wasn't nearly as good later on, but his skill set was so good that they couldn't deny him. And they weren't looking to just push bodies, they were looking to push talent, and he had the right talent, the right time, the right pedigree, everything fell into place for him, and good for him, he deserved it.
And very vastly underrated mic skills from both of those guys.
Especially Christian. Christian is an awesome jerk. He's one of the funniest people I know. He has this innate ability to get under anybody's skin. The only person he doesn't really aggravate is me, and I think largely it's because he knows I know what he's up to. So usually what he does is, it's me and him sitting together, and then he'll go and he'll aggravate a third party and keep looking out the corner of his eye like I'm the audience. And clearly I bust up laughing because he's a funny guy. So he doesn't really take too many like pot shots at me, not because we got some kind of an issue or anything. He just does it because he knows we have pretty much the same sense of humor, and I know half the time I'm like, Jay, you're a dick. And he's looking for me to say that.
The nod of approval, right?
Well, I guess just I don't know if he even needs my approval. He just likes having that audience to. You like to aggravate somebody, but like you also like to make sure that somebody else is having a giggle as well in the room. It's much more fun to take the mick out of somebody if somebody else in the room could go, yeah, I get it, ah ha ha, and you point and laugh. It sounds very mean, and it's totally against the Be a Star campaign, but it is funny.
Let's kick it back over to the Velvet Elvis, Zane Paisley.
Well, from you'd mentioned that you spent some time because of Edge and Christian. You got some work with the World Wrestling Federation. What was your thought when they introduced you as Just Joe?
Worst gimmick in wrestling history, without question. Worst gimmick in wrestling history. And every day I try to talk to them. I said, "Well, where's the money in this?" And they'd be like, "Oh, don't worry, it's the future. You just gotta, just keep going. We love your work. We're just trying to find, we'll figure something out." I'm like, "Yeah, but you're booking me out of a job." I said, "You've got me showing up backstage every week at a wrestling show not wanting to fight. What point is there in that? Like, have a fireman who doesn't like to play with water. Like, it's just ridiculous." You gotta have, there's gotta be a reason I'm there. Like, I remember talking to them specifically. I said, am I lying or am I telling the truth in all these backstage vignettes? And they're like, well, what difference does it make? I'm like, you're a writer. Why wouldn't you? Of course it makes a difference. If I'm telling the truth, I'm a babyface. And I'm legitimately trying to help. I'm a nice guy. But if I'm lying, why am I lying? What's the point of the lie? Nobody lies just for the sake of lying unless they're a sociopath. You lie because it's a means to an end. Why would you put a guy on TV every week who just showed up to lie for the sake of lying? He would show up because it served a purpose. I would turn one guy against another guy to hurt him so that when I wrestled the hurt guy, I stood a better chance of winning. Or something to that effect, there's no reason for me to be backstage. It's not like I had a backstage pass. There was no reason for me to be working with the company, so why was I there if I wasn't a fighter? If I didn't want to fight? There was no rationale behind it. So if I can't figure it out, and if the writers can't figure it out, why are the fans meant to figure it out? I hit them time and time again. They just kept saying, no, you just got to trust the writers. And I'm like, well, I've talked to the writers. The writers don't know what they're talking about. And so I just wound up in limbo, and that was it.
Who would tell you to trust the writers?
Triple H told me that. Shane McMahon told me that. Shane told me time and again. He goes, look, we love your work. You're set. I'm like, I'm not set. I said, you're booking me out of a job. I'll be unemployed in 6 months because there's no money in this. And you're not in the business of not making money. You're in the business of trying to turn a buck. This gimmick will not turn the buck the way you're booking me. He's like, I agree, and we'll talk, and da-da-da-da-da. JR got behind me a little bit on that. I have to give credit for that. JR did, he listened to me when I talked to him a little bit. Well, we gotta make sure we get something handled here, and, the writers have just gotta get something good in mind, and, barbecue sauce, and da-da-da. I'm like, okay, well, I do something. He's like, write something. I did write something. And then they sent me to Memphis to broaden it. And then Memphis was a friggin' crisis. It was terrible. Even though I met some great people, like Spanky and Daniel Bryan, all these guys. I used to live with these guys. And it was, I had a bunch of good people there, but the management didn't know what they were doing. And then when they bought WCW, they sacked everybody who they didn't have immediate TV plans for because they had all these WCW guys to put on TV, which is a smart business move. Why would you? And also, being Canadian, they were paying for a work visa for me. So I was an extra expenditure than just some local American guy. So they sacked me, they sacked Jason Sensation, and then a couple weeks later they got rid of Spanky and Daniel Bryan and Shooter Schultz and Lance Cade and all these different guys. So I just picked up sticks and went to Europe. And, wound up working in England a lot and stuff like that. But I could see the writing on the wall pretty much from about the second backstage vignette of the Just Joe thing. I thought, this is terrible. There's no money in this. And the more I tried to make noise about it, every time I wanted to do something like get angry and, just say, well, screw you then, I always got talked off the ledge by Jericho, Edge, or Christian, saying, look, just take your time. Don't worry. The writers are good. We'll talk you up. We'll talk you up. And I guess they made their efforts, but, it was a gimmick that you couldn't really save because it was nonsensical. So I knew I'd be out of a job in 6 months. And I wound up lasting a year, but, I got paid well. That's key.
So, Joe, did you actually
great travel and good money? I can't bitch.
A gimmick to them?
Yeah, the one. I had suggested a couple when I went and had a meeting with Vince before they started me, and I wanted to do a cult leader, and he said he didn't want to do that, and then just about everything I had said wound up on Mordecai, which kind of aggravated me. And then I said, I wanted to cut my hair short, suit and tie it, and, because they were really, the Attitude Era. They were getting a lot of people saying that they were, rude and crude and bad for kids and all that stuff. And I said, yeah, let me go out there and agree with those people. And then, of course, I'll lead a group. We'll call ourselves the moral majority, and we'll bash WWE for its sex and violence content. And then eventually you'll get, the company will get one up on us. And Vince was like, no, I just don't really see any money in that, and I can't imagine pushing that through. And then the Right to Censor came out.
Yeah, I was to say that was before Right to Censor, right?
Exactly, yeah. So every time I threw something at them, and then I talked to Al Snow later, I'm like, Al, I threw these ideas at them. Al's like, yeah, I get used to it. They'd say, make sure you throw us lots of ideas. We want your content. And then they never use you in your content. Basically, my gimmick was there to get the Hunter Kurt Angle storyline going. I went, hey, Hunter, Kurt's hitting on your wife. And then, hey, Kurt, Hunter's smacking Stephanie around. And then once they got fighting, they pulled me off it because the issue was started. But then in turn, they had nothing for me. They saw a very short-term goal for this gimmick, but they had no long-term. And that, while it worked, I guess, for them, because they sold a few pay-per-views off of Hunter and Kurt, it did nothing for me.
I'm sorry, I thought you had wrestling overseas. I mean, good grief, we were just talking about 40-some-odd countries that you wrestled in. You were in Russia, you were in Italy, you were in Puerto Rico, you were in South Africa, France. I mean, you've been all over the place. What kind of wear and tear does that do on you? I mean, do you love going and traveling the world like that, or is that something that really puts a toll on your body?
I guess as I'm getting older, it's harder. I mean, years ago, I was able to just go, pick up sticks and go someplace for 2-3 months. I go to England for 2 or 3 months at a time. Now I got kids. So I tend to spend more time at home now. And, I don't know, I find when I'm on the road longer, the first couple of days, of course, it's rough and tough. But then once I get into my groove, I'm fine. But when you get a lot of time off, then you go back in, it seems those matches, you feel them for a couple of days longer. I've had a couple injuries and stuff like that. I had my sternum broken. The doctor told me the next day after that at the hospital, he took the x-ray and said, oh yeah, your sternum's screwed up. He said, you gotta take 8 weeks off to let it fully heal. And then you've got 4 weeks of light training, and then a couple weeks you can go back to heavier weights, and then you can go back to wrestling. But Christmas was coming, so I took 1 week off. And I was totally blessed because my next series of matches, they were all 3-way dances and 4-way matches and stuff like that. So I was able to kind of hide amongst it and work with a bunch of guys who were very, very good to me about that. I'm like, guys, if you're going to hit me in the chest, do it hard enough to kill me, because if you just hurt me, I'm going to find you. It's just not on. But I'm hurt, I'm injured, I'm always, cautious of other people. You gotta be cautious with me. I've always been cautious. You be cautious, and everybody was wonderful with me. I didn't take one shot in the chest in any of it. Everything went perfectly. And then, of course, Christmas time came, so you get more time off at Christmas. So I was able to kind of heal up from that. But, in the time afterwards, you start to feel it more when you're taking these bumps and you feel like a little pain in your chest. You're like, okay, I hope that's not a heart attack. That would suck. I was doing a match in Switzerland, and, something went awry. My head cracked off this guy's leg, and my entire left arm went dead. I couldn't lift it. It was totally numb and dead. I was like, well, that's no good. So we ended up doing another 5-6 minutes. The guy's trying to pick me up because it was a tag match, and they're trying to pick me up to a spot. I'm like, no, guys, I'm going to stay here. Why don't you just keep kicking me until this comes back? It's going to come back, right? It's got to come back. Of course it's going to come back. And eventually it did, but then my neck just hurt for like a year. And trying to sleep on a plane where your head dips forward, by the time you wake up, your neck is just in agony. So I find that it's more than anything, my back should hurt more than it does, considering the amount of bumps I take. My knees, between the martial arts, the football, and the wrestling, yeah, I've got some knee pain, but they should be worse than they are. It's the things that I got injured, are the ones that kind of hang on more for the wear and tear. I'll feel my neck more on a long flight. I don't mind going for long journeys, just the money's got to be right to validate that time being away from my kids. But I do like traveling, and I've got a few other, I got Philippines coming up this year.
Oh, wow.
India. Gee whiz. I had a couple other things come up too. Supposed to go to South America to film a movie. A promoter in Mexico wants me to come in for him. I might be making a tour back up in Canada later this month. The guy buzzed me today on it. So I'll be taking a few more long flights before I pack it in.
So, Joe, what can you tell us the difference between, I ask everybody that comes on the show what they think of Japanese wrestling compared to America, but you've got a lot of insight into European wrestling as well. Can you kind of tell us the differences between, Japan and Europe and North American wrestling, and what's your favorite place to wrestle?
The differences have really slid away because of WWE's influence. WWE is just everywhere. They're like Coca-Cola. They've superseded soda. They've superseded what they're selling because they've become really the name of the product. So, like Europe used to be very unique. It was all, like the ropes were quite loose. There wasn't a lot of rope spots. The rings were quite stiff. So there weren't a lot of big bumps. It was a lot of chain wrestling. It was rounds like in boxing. You just don't see much of that anymore, though I did, there used to be a show on in England called World of Sports, and that was kind of their WWF for years and years and years. Like for 30 years or something ridiculous. And they were the main competition for soccer, and actually would beat soccer some weekends, which is amazing because like soccer's, it's a religion in England. But they did really, really well for years and years. And so they went away, like when Vince really hit it big, the TV stations in England, ITV, was like, well, shoot, we can buy tapes from Vince, or we can invest money in running wrestling shows and getting cameras and insurance and yada yada. It was cheaper to get Vince's product in. So World of Sport went away, but it just came back last November. They filmed they filmed a pilot, and I was there for it. So they brought back, it was one or two matches was in rounds. I was in a 2 out of 3 fall match, so we're trying to bring back that kind of European style. With Japan's all fighting hard. You don't have to, as much as guys, like the junior division, they like to do big bumps and head bumps and crazy ass falls and flips and very acrobatic. But by the same token, you have a guy like Atsushi Onita, who had a DDT, a power bomb, and a million stitches. As long as you can knock a guy down 100 times, as long as he kicks out on 100 times, the crowd goes berserk for him because they love that fighting hard thing. But if I were to if I was to take a guy like in New York City and beat him down and beat him down and beat him down, and he were to kick out 100 times, people get mad and say, oh, this guy's a loser. What the hell? And the guy who, on top of this guy being a loser, the guy kicking his ass, is kind of a loser himself because he can't beat this guy who he just keeps kicking the crap out of. So people would look down on that psychology in, say, New York or in Los Angeles, whereas in Japan, it's you're the biggest hero in the world because you just never quit. That never say die Rocky attitude. Once again, WWE's influence is kind of filtered in over there, and they like to get a little more gimmicky from time to time. For just pure in-ring wrestling style, I like wrestling in Japan. I love, Korakuen Hall and Budokan and stuff like that. That's so cool. The crowd's really appreciative, and they're really polite. Like, you come to some wrestling shows and people are just rude, or, when they chant, show your boobs at girls and stuff like that. Like, it's just kind of inappropriate. You don't need to do that. You wouldn't find that in Japan. And they seem very knowledgeable. Whereas, in North America, I like how wild and crazy the crowds get. And they don't get as wild and crazy in Japan. So it just depends on what your preference is. as opposed to which style is really I couldn't say one style is the best. It just depends on what your preference is. I like going out there and just tearing it up and having a great match and having the crowd appreciate it. But by the same token, I also love, if you watch the Samoa Joe Kenta Kobashi match, it was banging on 5 stars, 5 stars. I don't know if it was a 5-star match, but the crowd jumped that up to an extra star for sure. Because it was such a wild, and it's so much fun to wrestle in front of a wild and crazy crowd. And, you don't find that in Japan as much. So as much as I love wrestling in Japan, I also like the wild and crazy crowds of the States or some of the ones in Europe. But even then, the European fans seem to know more about North American wrestling than they do about their own, local wrestling. Like when you talk about Johnny Sane or something, you say something like to a British fan, you say, do you like British style wrestling? They say Big Daddy, they say Giant Haystacks. And then a lot of them filter away and like, well, I remember this one guy. What was his name again? Whereas if you say, well, name somebody in the 80s, they can name you the entire card of WrestleMania 1. So it's just kind of weird how WWE's influences has blurred the lines on what the industry is. It's all kind of reverting to one style overall. But there are pockets that still pop up where people still want their own brand. And I think ultimately that's what I gravitate to. I like the different styles. I like the different fan bases, the different move sets, the different psychology. To me, that piques my interest more than anything.
Joe, you called Germany home now, and we'll have you explain how that came about here in a minute. I've got a very knowledgeable wrestling fan, and you've spent some time in the Catch Wrestling Association, so he's never even heard of the name Otto Wanz. What kind of impact and influence does he still have on the German scene?
Oh, people still remember Big Otto. Otto's still a great guy. I think next year is like the 50th anniversary of when CWA began. And I imagine somebody's gonna capitalize on that to try and turn a buck. Otto was a tremendous influence over here, and it was wonderful to me. Otto was super. I mean, I know plenty of people. He's a promoter, so there's people are going to run hot and cold with him. But Otto was always wonderful with me. Maybe it's because he's a huge guy, and my dad's a huge guy. We got talking. Like I wanted to get a big shirt for my dad, a big CWA shirt. And Otto's like, "Oh, you mean big like me?" I said, "Oh no, my dad's way bigger than you." He's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Yeah." And he was just amazed, right? So in turn, after that, every day it's like, hey, Otto, it's like, hey, Joe, how's your dad doing? So I think my dad inadvertently got me over with Otto. But Otto and Otto's influence still here. I mean, I bet you if you were to advertise that Otto was coming to a show here, you'd probably draw really well, even though, he's an older gent and there's, he might not, I don't even know if he could get in the ring anymore. Like even up the steps, he might, be really, I know a lot of guys his age are just, have trouble. But just him being in the building would probably still bring people in. He's still got that kind of iconic status with a lot of people over here. People still talk about CWA to this day. I get pictures from fans from CWA days. To this day, I'm autographing them at wrestling shows now. CWA, I wrestled for them in '98. And fans still come up to me in Germany today with like photos and programs that they've kept from all these years for me to autograph this many years later. So it's kind of interesting that Otto still has that effect. Otto
Wanz, a former AWA heavyweight champion, Blitz Forrester. This one's for you. How'd you end up in Germany? What made you decide to call that home base?
Married a German.
That's a very good reason.
Real epic, huh? Well, when I was over here working for Otto, I met my wife now, obviously. We met when I was working the CWA in Hanover, and just kind of fostered it up from there. She moved with me. I left WWE. We got married. I kind of called this home base after I left WWE, but I was spending most of my time in England. And then she moved with me to Puerto Rico. Then I moved back to Canada because I was working for TNA. So I was living in Windsor because it was right across from Detroit, and it was a cheap ticket for TNA to fly me from Detroit. Because if they were to fly me from Canada, it's international, it'd be like $1,000 a week or something in airfares. But if I were to fly from Detroit, it's like $200. So to be nice, I moved to Windsor to help out with the company. They were fledgling at the time. And so the wife moved with me there to Windsor for a year, and then we moved back here. Just because I found more opportunity over here for me. I mean, Hanover's a fairly central place. I can get just about anywhere in Europe fairly easy and fairly cheaply. I mean, there are flights here. I've flown from here to Manchester, England for 1 penny.
Wow.
Legitimately, yeah. With taxes, it was 21 euros. But it's cheaper to fly here than it is to drive. Whereas, I know a lot of guys in the States, they're putting 6 guys in a small car and driving 15 hours for $50. Whereas I get flown all over the place over here and make a living. I don't judge them for it. They wanted to be closer to the WWE and hopefully have WWE looking at them and all that stuff. And that's how they want to handle their career, and absolutely support them 100%. Go at it, guys. Love it. I found that over here, Central in Europe, I was able to get 2 TV series in England on top of 44 countries worldwide, really based out of Hanover. So I felt this was my best opportunity, and I don't regret it.
Let's kick it back over to the Velvet Elvis, Zane Paisley.
Well, you had mentioned working with TNA while you were living in Windsor. You had actually won the NWA World Tag Team Championship as part of the Red Shirt Security. Can you tell us about that and what your reaction was when they told you that they were going to put the straps on you?
I mean, what?
Your reaction when they told you that you were going to be holding the World Tag Team Championship?
Okay. With it's kind of nice to be able to tell my kids years from now that I was an official world champ with like a big deal organization of some sort. But I just found it was weird because I was originally brought in as kind of a steamroller for Vince Russo's outfit, Sports Entertainment Extreme, Sex, ha ha ha. Well, that was the gimmick, right? I mean, TNA is a gimmick. I mean, come on, TNA, really? Yep. But anyways, I was brought in to kind of beat the tar out of Jeff, and I did, and I had a little program with Jeff. And then within a couple of months, I went from being the steamroller who was trying to murder Jeff. I used that as a springboard to the lucrative securities field where I would bodyguard Jeff. Trick knows that a security guard in a red shirt usually gets killed pretty early. So I didn't quite understand the point of being brought in that regard, like being brought into that. The only reason I could see is because like my partner was Kevin Northcutt, who's a great guy. The way they spoke to Kevin, the way they talked about Kevin, I think they kind of had a plan for Kevin and they wanted to build him. And they felt I could assist as far as helping them with a match psychology, because they kept asking my opinion on how to do things more. Like they'd look at me when we were talking about match psychology and stuff as opposed to him. It seemed like they wanted my input more, which is flattering. But also when it came time for somebody to lie down, they kind of always looked in my direction as well, because I think they wanted to protect him, because they had future plans for him. He's a big guy, strong guy, good body, all that stuff. I think that was the kind of direction they were going in initially. And so I was kind of brought in more as a filter to help develop Kevin. That's the way it looks to me in how they did it. And I don't really know if Kevin even needs that, because I think Kevin was quite good as he was. But, they put us in, we did a bit with America's Most Wanted, they put the tag belts on us, and then 1 week later we dropped the tag belts to AJ Styles and Abyss, but Abyss left the match like 2 seconds in, got into a fight with Apollo and fought through the rest of the building. So AJ Styles fought both me and Kevin and won the tag belts, but then they had to vacate them because he didn't have a partner. So I thought, well, that's a ridiculous. Why wouldn't you put heat on us and have us murder Jeff? Like, don't have us beat AJ if you don't want him to lie down. That's fine, but just have us thrash him. He was a real favorite with the crowd. Have us thrash him and then have him come back later on with somebody to beat us. But to just pull it off us the way they did just seemed like, well, we just want to get the belts off him for some reason. And it's just, I don't know, the way I thought it was handled very, very poorly. It was not handled in a money way. It was handled in a, we're desperate, let's do something to draw interest way. And the interest was always, what the hell was that? As opposed to, oh my God, what the hell were we doing? We didn't get the right kind of shock reaction. We got the, I can't believe they did that crap reaction, which didn't help us. But I mean, like I say, they put the NWA tag belts on me. I can tell my kids I was a tag champion if they, but I mean, my kids have also got to understand that nobody wins or loses in wrestling. We get put over. Undertaker's streak really doesn't matter because Undertaker never beat anybody. Undertaker got put over for years and years. So when he lost to Brock Lesnar, to me, so what? He put Brock over. Good. As long as you keep that in mind when you tell people stuff, then really belts don't matter that much. It's flattering that people want to make you the face of the company. But keep in mind that it's the person you're working with who has equal value to you. You're not in any way above a guy just because you're going over him, because he's doing you the favor and you got to respect him for it.
That is a true wrestling veteran right there. Not being a mark for your own belt, right?
So belts are supposed to be props, a marketing tool. The boys shouldn't really care about them as much beyond the fact that it puts you on top of the card, which for Vince for years, you got a piece of the gate. If you're in the main event, you get a higher percentage off the gate than the opening card guy. So yeah, you want to be champ. But if you want to be champ just so you can run around with the belt and say, look at me, I'm the champ. You're not really the champ, mate.
So we're starting to run out of time with you, Joe. Let me hit you up with a couple more questions before we let you go. Talking about TNA, it's been a decade since you've been there, and rumors from day one until now is the company is just a complete mess. Number one, did you feel that way? And number two, do you watch it now and what your reactions to it now?
I hate to sound like a bitter old guy, even though I am, but I don't watch it. I rarely watch wrestling just because I've done so much of it. I see so much of it in my work life. I rarely spend time watching it in my free time. From what I read, it does sound like they're a disaster. When I was there, it seemed like they had kind of one mission, and that was make Jeff an iconic hero. The trouble is Jeff was never going to be an iconic hero. Jeff's not that guy. So you can push the guy as hard as you want. He's never going to get over massively. Several companies have tried. All have failed. There's got to be a reason for that. I found in my opinion, they didn't try enough to build their own image. They had their own image with the X Division. But then I got talking to Dutch Mantel while we were there, and he wanted one night to have Abyss come out and kill everybody in the X Division. Like, he wanted to have like an 8 or 10 man X Division match. And then Abyss would come out and just rape the team and walk out. And then that would be it. No more X Division. I was like, why would you do that? And people don't want to see the little guys. They don't want to see little flippy fly guys. They want to see big man, big strong man, big strong sweaty man, big strong sweaty bureau man. I'm like, okay, calm down. But he and I was like, that's the one thing that you guys have over Vince. That's the one thing you guys have that is that's really drawing interest more than what Vince is doing as far as using smaller guys. Why wouldn't you?
That on the 6-sided ring.
Well, they had the 4-sided ring when I was there. They hadn't put in the 6-sided ring yet. I like the idea of the 6-sided ring as far as when you turn on the TV, you can't mistake it for WWE. You can't. As soon as you see it, that's got to be TNA because it's their ring. Getting rid of it, just saying, "Oh, by the way, we were wrong. Oops, that was terrible." Getting rid of it in that regard. And when they introduced it, they didn't explain. They didn't have a valid reason why it was more valuable. Because I remember the advertisers like, "We got TNA, we got the 6-sided ring, baby." You're like, "Well, what makes it better? 6 sides, you can count them." Yeah. What makes 6 sides better? Like, are the ropes tighter? Is there more angles that these guys can hit from? The action comes from. Give me something. Give me something to go. Yeah, that's why this is better than WWE. That's why your ring is different. That's why your image is different. And they never did that. Like, they just kind of throw these ideas out and don't have any rationale behind it. And then they get guys like Magnus never. I mean, from what I've read, Magnus never won clean. Well, surprise. I mean, that's the honky tonk man. That's your main event guy? Like, I like Honky. Honky's hilarious. I love hanging with Honky. But that was his role, is he'd never win clean. He rarely won. He'd win squash matches, but he'd never win against a name. And that's what you're going to do with your heavyweight champ. Your heavyweight champ's he doesn't necessarily have to win. He doesn't always have to cheat, but he has to be brutal. He has to do something. A guy with a build like Magnus. I know Magnus. I've known him from England for years. He's a talented athlete. He's a good guy. He brings a lot to the table. And I think they restricted him by saying, well, no, we've got to, he's got to hit him with a roll of quarters, or he's got to, they, instead of making him a cheap shot artist, they cheapen the character. And I don't want to pay top dollar to see a cheap product. I think that's where they're losing ground.
It sounds like with your work in film and television that, I know that they have people there that are on set to talk about continuity and if things make sense. It sounds like you would be excellent at that for professional wrestling on TV.
Yeah, but I get so fed up with arguing. I do it on the indie shows here, and I help write for a promotion in South Africa. I've taken over as a foreign talent booker, and I'm helping with a lot of stuff with this new promotion in the Philippines. This other promotion who I work for in Israel, they've got some stuff coming up throughout the Middle East. They want me to help and stuff on that, and I'm going to try and keep some continuity going there too. The benefit now, as opposed to years ago, is that I'm the old guy. I'm the guy who's, they look at my resume, okay, TNA, WWE, 44 countries, all that stuff. So most of the promoters are younger than me. So they tend to listen to me. Whereas years ago, I was the young guy telling the old guy, hey, this doesn't make sense. The old guy's going, who are you? You've been here 10 minutes. Kiss my ass. So the perception was that I'm just a loudmouth kid who doesn't know anything. Even though I'm looking at things from a very logical way, they don't want to be told they're wrong. But now promoters tend to listen to me more. So a continuity thing, I'd be happy doing that. But I'd also, I'm a control freak. So if somebody comes up to me and says, I want to do this, and I'm like, well, this doesn't make sense for this, and this reason, they're like, yeah, but I want to do it anyways, and I pay your bills, so give me what I want. On one hand, I'm like, I want to bite my tongue and say, okay, we'll do what you want. But on the other hand, I'm punching the wall going, for crying out loud, just listen to me, I know what I'm talking about. I don't know if I'm up to arguing that much. I guess it would depend on how big the money was.
Yeah. All right, Joe, final question. You ready?
Yes, sir.
You mentioned his name, so let's get it out there. Jeff Jarrett. He's announcing his new promotion coming out. Number one, would you be interested if he gave you a call? And number two, is it going to be just another means for Jeff Jarrett to put himself over again?
I can't imagine Jeff calling me. He and I've had words more than once. He would have to come with a lot of apologies, and I don't think he would consider me a moneymaker big enough for him to swallow his pride to say sorry. As much as I believe I could do it, I don't think he would. I've joked with a few people like, oh, he's starting a new promotion. I heard he was starting up a new daycare center for kids about to be molested. Ha ha ha, right? But, but I know it's mean, isn't it? But by the same
this
token,
is the Undisputed Wrestling Show. We're talking to Joe E. Legend.
But the thing is with him is like, I honestly don't think he'll use it as a means to necessarily put himself over unless he tries to be the new Mr. McMahon character. I can't imagine he's going to try and be the world champion in-ring guy because, he's the same age as me. He might be a year older, but it's right in that range. He's got to be looking for a future to his company. So I imagine he'll take a lot of the TNA guys that have just been released. I imagine he would probably be making calls to Saban and to AJ Styles and all these guys. And whether or not, AJ's doing pretty well for New Japan, so I don't know if he'd accept right away. But either way, I'm sure he'll be putting out feelers for that. I don't see, as soon as I read something, they put out a press bulletin, something to the effect of, it's not just a bunch of wrestling like the other guys. It's like, well, the other guys aren't. Everybody complains that it's all like backstage vignettes and Triple H talking for a month every night. Well, that's what everybody complains about online, is that it's just, there's not enough matches, there's not enough actual wrestling. And instead of agreeing and saying, okay, crowd, I'll give you what you're asking for, he's saying, we'll give you even less of what you're asking for. Aren't you going to love it? I get the distinct impression it's going to be a lot of NASCAR-related stuff, because he's got a real hard-on for NASCAR. I imagine there's going to be a lot of, NASCAR drivers. It'll be a niche market thing. It'll be Music City Wrestling from Memphis. I believe that was, or was it Nashville? Maybe Nashville. Must have been Music City. But he was like champ of that. That was the Memphis territory at one point. He's going to try and sell it as national, and maybe he'll take Spike, TNA spot from Spike. Who knows? Or on the Country Channel or whatever. But it's going to be a very, very regional product. I don't see it drawing big money because I don't think he's a big money guy. I don't think he has big money ideas. Like Dutch Mantel. I don't really get along with Dutch Mantel. I think he was a terrible booker for TNA, but for Puerto Rico, he was awesome. Like, he proved me wrong many times. When we were in Puerto Rico together, he told me stuff he was doing in the back of my mind. I'm like, are you out of your mind? That's ridiculous. But it worked. He knows how to book niche markets. He knows how to book regional. And he has I hate to admit it because I don't like the guy, but he does have a tremendous value for a regional market guy. He does. Jeff is that same thing. Jeff is not a major international superstar. Jeff is a niche market guy. And I don't know if him spearheading yet another wrestling promotion, if he could make a massive wrestling promotion work, he would have done it with TNA the first time. I can't imagine he's going to do it now, with what he's got to work with. All the guys he really wants are either with WWE or with TNA. He's going to have to pilfer Ring of Honor, but I mean, Vince has the money to take those guys. TNA can take those guys. I don't know what Jeff has left to bring to the table, unless he's going to be the guy who brings in all the guys from Mexico and tries to win over the Spanish audience.
All right, Joe, before we let you go, tell us a little bit again about Booked, and then what else you got going on today?
Oh, golly. Let's see. This weekend I'm working for German Hurricane Wrestling here in Germany. Then the next weekend I've got Power of Wrestling for 3 days in Hanover, the Thursday, Friday, and the Saturday. I was actually talking today. I might be filming a big national TV commercial here on the 18th, just after the POW shows. Shoot. I've signed on to do a big reality series for a major network in the States. I can't, once again, my hands are tied because they haven't made the formal announcement.
But this is the Undisputed Wrestling Show where all announcements are made, Joe.
What's that?
So this is the Undisputed Wrestling Show where all announcements are made.
Well, as soon as I get the green light to do it, but I don't want to do the announcement now and then have to come back and say, by the way, I lost my friggin' spot on that show because I announced it. It wouldn't do you any favor. But I've got that going. I've got about 6 films I'm shooting throughout this year. There's a new promotion in Mexico called LL Max, who I'm going to be working for. Golly. And then I'm putting out my autobiography, which is going to be probably a 3 to 5 book series. The first book is called Joey Legend, and no, I haven't heard of you either. Well, you gotta have a sense of humor, right?
That's great. I love it.
Yeah. And yeah, I'm just gonna keep, picking up bookings, around the world, around Europe predominantly. But I'm heading back down to South Africa. They just renewed their TV deal, so I'm supposed to be going back down there for WWP. And more stuff in Belgium and France and Russia and Philippines and, just everywhere. I'm gonna see how many places I can hit before my kids force me to pack it in.
And don't forget fans in Bristol in the UK.
Yep.
Joe will be there November 21st and 22nd for Booked. So you'll make sure those in the England area will want to check out Joe and say hi to him as well. Joe, before we let you go, can you say you are listening to the Undisputed Wrestling Show in as many different languages as you can.
Oh, good luck. I'll do it in English to make sure I get it right. You are listening to the Undisputed Wrestling Show, and this is Joe E. Legend saying heroes come and go, legends live forever.